Okay. Again, thanks for hanging with us, guys. So my next guest here, most of you probably know him from his YouTube channel under the Flukemaster. He's really dedicated his really whole social media being to teaching people to fish, beginners, intermediate, experts alike. I know I've been a big fan of his. I've watched his content for quite some time now. And the guy I'm talking about here is Jensen. So we're going to go ahead and bring Gene on. If you guys would here, those of you that are on already, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, hit that like button. Again, it helps hit the, it's free to do, helps the channel get to a broader audience. And we definitely want to show him some love here. So we're going to go and bring Gene on here. Gene, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you guys doing?
You're muted. That's why. Right here.
Did you mute me?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
Awesome.
Awesome.
It was on our end this time.
Well, I tell you what, if we get to one of these that is just all smooth sailing, I'm going to think there's something wrong here.
Yeah,
it's always been something.
Yeah, you got to do something wrong every time. It's
yeah,
great.
and I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not going to spend all this time on IT. I think StreamYard really does not like Apple because I've had to run Google Chrome on an Apple, and I think that's where a lot of the issues are. So we literally switched over to my wife's station here. So
I've been running Apple with them since they started.
Man,
so, I hate to say this, I've never had that kind of issue with them.
Yeah, it's weird. I say we've got we've got 1 gig internet. We've got it plugged directly into the computer. We've got the whole 9 there, and it's one of the newest iMacs. So I guess that's going to stay my my editing computer, and then do everything else on Windows. I hate to say, but man, so tell me, we'll just kind of get started here, Gene. So how long have you been doing YouTube?
Oh gosh, 2008.
Oh wow.
Yeah, something like it's like February 2008 or 2009. So about 15 years, I guess.
February seems to be the magic month. That's actually where I got started at, was February. Obviously not 2008, but so just kind of talked a little bit about what got you started on YouTube. What got you wanting to do videos on fishing there?
Well, I was a Scoutmaster and I've been one for 25 years. Not currently one, but was recently. But anyway, I had some boys that I took on a camp out on one spring break to a public fishing area here in Georgia, and we had a blast. We caught a ton of fish, and 3 of the boys were inner city kids. And you know, a couple of my other boys that lived out in the country didn't have a dad that fished or anything else. So I had 5 boys out of my scout troop that fell in love with it, wanted to learn how to fish. And my problem is I have a full-time job on a weekend at the hospital. I worked at a level 1 trauma center, and I was like, look, I can't take you every weekend. I said, but there's this new website out that'll let you put videos on their website for free. And all the other ones at the time charged a stupid amount of money to be able to host videos. So you could, you know, originally YouTube was there to host videos to put on your website. So it was just a place to store the videos instead of holding them on your website. And I said, I can do that. And I told them I'd make some videos for them so they could watch them and learn some techniques and learn some knot tying skills and that kind of thing. And so where was I going with this? And so I started making them, and I sold some fishing tackle, be able to buy my first camera, which is a piece of junk camera. And I made 20 or so videos for them. And then after about a year, I realized that they weren't the only ones watching them. There was a lot more people watching them. And I also realized that nobody on YouTube at the time was teaching anybody any kind of fishing skills. It was all buy my product and watch my cat. And and so I was very anti-secret. I didn't like, and I'm still that way. I don't like fishing secrets. I had a guy up the street from me. It was a neighbor who won a lot of tournaments and never fished with anybody else, never shared any information, never wanted to talk about bass fishing, and I was just like, I am so against him that I want to share everything. And so that's kind of the motivator behind it. And then on top of that, I guided a private resort in North Carolina, which was simple fishing. I just took rich people out fishing. I was a glorified fishing caddy is all I was.
Yeah.
And but I fell in love with showing them things and things like that. So I used that lake to be able to make instructional videos, and it just kind of took off from there.
Nice. Nice. So have you always, now obviously, you know, kayak fishing, I mean, fishing from a kayak or a portable vessel has kind of been a thing for a long, long time. But did fishing get you into kayaking, or did kayaking get you into fishing? Have you always been fishing, you know, most of your life? Or
I've always been paddling.
Okay.
As far as growing up in the scouting organization, and I
Yeah.
had a scout camp 10 miles down the road from my house. I would go as a teenager. I would drive when I could drive. I would drive down there. Got to be friends with the camp ranger, and he'd let me take a canoe out. And I caught a lot of my very first bass, largemouth, out of a canoe.
Nice.
And so I fell in love with that part. I grew up trout fishing with my dad up in North Georgia. He used to trout fish out in the rivers up in Wyoming and Montana and stuff like that back in the 50s when they were wild. So he took me trout fishing, taught me all the basics. But for largemouth, it was just me reading everything I could read and studying what I could study and learning on my own for the most part.
So Southwest Georgia Kayak Bass Fishing, teaching the world to fish motto. And that's definitely something that I've always appreciated. So fishing got me into kayaks. I've paddled around. Like I said, I had like a little aluminum John boat growing up, and grew up bank fishing like most of us here in the South. And, you know, that first little time to get out on the water and to access some of those areas that I couldn't from a bank and catching big fish, gar. I was into catfishing when I was younger. And so, you know, getting into the kayak world, fishing from kayaks was kind of new to me. You know, I've watched your videos and then Chad's videos, of course. And, you know, and now working in the paddle sports industry, it's definitely opened up some doors and gotten really big here in probably the last, I would say, 5 years. You know, with COVID and, you know, people kind of getting more into the outdoor space from that and not leaving, obviously, now that the restrictions have lifted. Talk a little bit about what you've seen on the kayak fishing world, how that's grown or how rapidly that's grown here in the last few years.
Wow. Geez, I've met Hoover at a Bassmasters Classic in 2005, I believe.
Mhm.
And that's when he was working with Wilderness Systems and all
Yeah.
9 yards. And I learned that it had gotten a lot more serious than I had previously known, you know, and I was a belly boater because that's all I could afford at the time. I was, you know, out jumping, pond hopping on wildlife management areas and public fishing areas in Georgia, as much as I could with a belly boat. And then I saw this plastic boat that at that time Chad wasn't as big as he is now. And and I said, I can do this. And so I saved up my money and bought my first kayak. Did the same mistake a lot of kayak fishermen do is bought one from the big box store, and 2 trips later tried to sell it to somebody. You know, it's just, and but I learned that I really enjoyed it, really loved it. It needed to be more comfortable for me. So I sold it and saved my money until and for a while, really. And then YouTube took off, and I got busy doing it. And then all of a sudden the kayak world and the YouTube world my YouTube world kind of collided, and it just led to what's going on now. So
Yeah, and it's definitely talking about kayaking and fishing. I mean, let's be honest, everybody and their brother has a fishing channel, it seems like. But in the kayak world, yes and no. And that's one thing that kind of got me started was, you know, I've been working at, you know, I manage a large, you know, kayak retailer. And, you know, typically when people come in, and we talk to a lot of people on a year-to-year basis, and they've always done some kind of research. You know, I say, hey, I've been watching YouTube videos. And, you know, what got me started in it was, okay, well, usually breaking down the stigmas or breaking down a video that they watched that may not have been the best information. And then I'm thinking, I'm sitting around, and February is pretty lonely around here in the kayak industry. So I'm like, man, I can do this. I can, I just started with a little cell phone and just holding it up, and then as I'm just doing walkthroughs and talking about, specs and, how these perform. Is it river, lake, or a little bit of both? And then, because the people that want to fish, and whether a bass boat is in their budget or not is that's been the biggest difference, in my opinion, as to where the kayak used to be like the poor man's fishing boat.
Around, February is pretty lonely around here in the kayak industry. So the biggest difference in
Sorry, trying to share your.
poor man's
And it won't let me mute it.
February is pretty.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Trying to share it, and it's supposed to keep it muted, and it didn't do it.
But now today I'm seeing a lot more people selling their bass boat, because everyone's got that really nice boat that they bought on a whim. It's kind of like the motorcycle. It's the water motorcycle. They watch TV, they watch a YouTube video, or they watch a Bassmasters Classic or something. They go out and they get that boat, and then they use it a couple times, and then maybe it's the boat, break out another $1,000 deal, the maintenance and the docking fees and all the other costs that you don't really think of. And then now they're saying, like, man, these kayaks, you can put motors on them now, and you can put fish finders, and now they're coming from the factory with this stuff already kind of integrated, or the ability to do so. And it kind of brings me to what you're currently in, and me too. Got one sitting in the garage. I'm rigging up here the Bonafide PWR, or you got New Canoes Unlimited, or you got the Hobie Pro Angler, which kind of has gotten a lot of flack here the last couple of years. But a lot of these kayaks with a lot of features, and they kind of blur that line between boat and kayak. So we've all got our own opinions of it, but what is your biggest advantage in your use to kayak over, boat, or, John boat, whether it's bass boat or John boat?
Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit. When things break, I have what's in my truck can fix what's going on with my kayak and get me out on the water. I'm not out 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and I've blown my share of motors. That, unfortunately, with what I did and being at the forefront of the YouTube world and not fishing professional tournaments, I was able to be the guinea pig for several new motors that came out on the market for smaller aluminum boats. And so I've blown my share of motors, and it's no fun, because then even if the company's sending you a new motor, you're still out, for a while. But when something goes wrong with my kayak, I can pull I've got electrical connections in a box in my car. I've got everything I need in the back of my truck in my toolbox to be able to fix everything I can right at the boat ramp. And so there's a lot fewer issues and things that can go wrong when you're just using a trolling motor as propulsion, or an electric motor, period. I know I'm gonna rag on Torqeedo. We all know about the Torqeedo error codes, but most of them are just minimal stuff that you can fix if you just look them up on the internet. And with the motor guide, when you ever have issues with a motor guide, you always check the batteries in the remote first. And then you check your connections with your in the circuit, and then you check your battery and make sure your battery hasn't gone bad. After that, it's the motor, but usually it's the first one of the first three that goes on. And you just, very simple, just with a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of, or you can call somebody who knows, and be able to get that. So and then for the other thing is that I don't fish for exercise. I just don't see the point in being tired when I get to my spot 2 miles away, and try to stop and catch fish. I just want to fish. I just want to catch fish. So, and I can see where the paddlers are coming from and stuff like that. But my main goal when I'm on the water is to get that green fish in the boat, and I'll worry about a weight loss program later. And so, that's what the gym's for.
That's a good segue to our next question here. Sin TX Basson said, "You're looking great. How much weight have you dropped over the past years?"
56 pounds since Christmas.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's the Flukemaster weight loss program. My wife lets me go fishing every day, so I don't eat in the morning. I go fish until sundown, and I come home and I eat a meal. So
Nice. So what that'd be a really interesting question for you though, because we all what would be your go-to snack on the water? So we've all like you can go healthy on, or you can really go some garbage out there, which we've done both really. But what's your go-to snack for when you're going out on the water? Obviously, you're going to carry some fluids with you, but
yeah, plenty of water. Vienna sausages or sardines.
nice.
In either hot sauce or hot sauce, because the new mustard sauce is nasty. It used to be really good back in the day. There was always a pack of saltine crackers and sardines in the glove box of my truck when I was a teenager, because I spent the whole day out in the woods or outside and would forget to eat, and so that was my survival kit.
Eating fish while you're fishing. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, teaching people to fish, and there's probably a lot of people that again are just getting started on fishing or kayak fishing, both on this. What would be your biggest advice to give somebody just starting out? Namely, when we watched your video on beginning, starting tackle, because there's so many options. There's you go into a Bass Pro or a local tackle shop, and it's just wall to wall. Just plastics, hard plastics. You got bottom baits, top water. What would you suggest somebody just starting out on the key ingredients to start out?
Again, this is kind of a shameless plug, but I have taught that playlist of for beginners that I have on my YouTube channel has taught so many thousands of people how to get started. Mm-hmm. I totally 100% recommend that. And I know a lot of other people who have gone through that program, that I call it.
I'm one of them. Yeah.
It runs through the basics. And when I made the first 5 videos, I had a single mom in mind. And this was an idea from one of my sisters, is that you have a single mom who wants to teach her son or daughter or kid how to fish, but she doesn't know for herself, and then it's intimidating to go to a tackle shop and ask Bubba behind the counter to show her what to do. And so I kept it very basic from the how to get a fishing license all the way through, and then how to pick your first tackle. And that video you talked about with the tackle goes through several different baits that are kind of prerequisites to other baits, or they lead into learning other techniques and things like that. So it's a good foundational bait, a bunch of baits to learn how to fish.
Budget friendly too.
Yeah. So that one, and the other thing is just talk to people, get on Facebook pages, talk to people about how to do the basics, and don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, because you're never going to get the answer if you don't ask them. And it is what it is. And when you get going, don't get overwhelmed. Keep it simple. And then in the kayak world is always wear your life jacket. Always don't take it off except to change a jacket. Take a layer off and put it back on.
You touched on something about you had in mind the single mom. I can't tell you the number of times that we've been just at the local Walmart and looking at fishing tackle, because I get really lost in let's go get more stuff. But one of the things is we always get stopped, and I've been stopped a lot by other women asking about the different types of tackle and what kind of hooks to use and all that. And I'm when I say relatively new, I mean, I've been doing this for 2 years now. So I'm, baby in all of this, but I've watched some of your videos, and I remember when we first started fishing, he was watching them. Yeah. There are so many things that I've learned from you. So I just want to say thank you, because a lot of people have really been impacted, and I think it's been a very good thing.
Awesome. I'm glad. It's been my pleasure for sure. I love hearing the stories. That's my motivation. 100%.
Yeah. And like I said, with me, what kept me going, because and I'm sure you've run into this. YouTube can really be a grind sometimes, looking for content, editing, doing all that. And, when you get somebody email you or comment on there and thinking like, man, you saved me a ton of money by helping me choose the right, whether it's kayak or baits or, any of that. And that kept me going, especially starting out, because, it's kind of a gradual increase was for me there. But I got a really good question here from Kelly Chambers here. So ask Gene about old school baits. What did you fish with as a kid that you can't get anymore and miss?
Oh goodness. Well, Helgramites, because we don't have them here in Georgia. You have to, except down in the rivers, and you have to dig for them too much. I caught my very first fish at 2 or 3 years old on a Helgramite, up in the north, or up in the Virginia mountains. Let me think that I can't get now. The old, and they probably still make them. The old Lazy Ike, it was just basically a precursor to a crankbait. And and I caught so many big trout on that thing, and then big red eye bass in the creeks and the rivers. It was just a very simple, easy thing to cast. But I grew up trout fishing in North Georgia with a bag of whole kernel corn and another bag of number 10 sinkers and hooks. Just is what it is.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. Me growing up, I don't think I touched an artificial lure until I was in my late 20s. I grew up fishing minnow traps by the creek, going to the river, and then, like you said, if I was trout fishing, kernel corn, get some power bait or something maybe. But yeah. Have you ever been to North Arkansas? You say you like to trout fish a lot.
Not North Arkansas. I haven't. We usually went out to the Snake River. My grandmother had a friend that had a cabin on Henry's Fork Reservoir, which is world-class trout fishing, but she would rent it to us for $25 a week. And so we spent summers messing around with Henry's Fork and Snake River and Yellowstone and that kind of stuff. So
nice. Yeah. If you ever look up Cotter, Arkansas, Cotter. Now, Cotter says they're the trout fishing capital of the world. I don't know. I don't know if I go that far, but we have the White River here. Literally runs right behind the kayak store. Now it's dam fed, and the state literally just, they're coming by the truckload and just dumping trout, rainbow, brown trout. They've even got some gold trout in there.
Oh yeah, the White River. Okay, yep. Yeah, I got it.
And Cotter is it's a year-long. Cotter is nothing but Airbnbs and fishing guides. That's all it is. And a kayak store.
Yep.
Holy cow. Huh.
But beautiful area. I said, we got the Buffalo National River runs through here. We've got a little area, a couple of creeks here where the smallmouth fishing is phenomenal. Like we both went out, between me and her and 2 other customers that we hang out with. We caught over 100 fish on that trip, huge smallmouth fish. We got bull shoals in Norfolk Lakes. That we're blessed in this area. And I said, I'd lived here for a while before we even got into kayaks. I was telling her, it's like, it was around, COVID time. And like, we live around so much water and so much good fishing. It'd be stupid not to do it.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of got us into it.
That's cool. That's cool.
So tell us, you've gotten into a new venture from what we saw, where you're now kind of doing kayak guiding. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I used to guide when I had my big boats and back before YouTube really, really took off. I would guide, and it was what I did was I would go to other people's lakes and show them how to figure out their own lakes, and give them 3 months worth of advice and show them different places that would work over the next 3 months. And I really enjoyed that, but it was really expensive. I had to charge a premium. I had to charge travel and my expenses for staying there for 2 or 3 days and that kind of stuff. So it limited the number of customers. So I'm an hour and 20 minutes from Gunnersville, and I basically camp in my truck. I have as my Boy Scouts once called me, I'm the world's greatest car camper, and so I live over there during the week if I don't have things I have to do home here. and then I guide there. And so, and really for $400 a day, which is dirt cheap for guiding, I get to take people out and show them the ropes. I have a second rigged up PWR 129 if they want to fly in, or they want to, or they don't have a kayak that is suitable to big lakes and that kind of stuff. We can jump in that and go. But I just love that's my joy, is taking people fishing, watching them catch fish, watching them learn how to do this kind of stuff. Gunnersville's a very interesting lake. It's full of grass, and you got to learn how to figure out, learn how to deal with that grass and catch fish in it. By the way, the Bassmaster kayak series right now, they're killing it. It's I told Steve last week when I was fishing a tournament that he was running up in North Georgia, I was like, Gunnersville is going to be a barn burner. They're going to catch the snot out of fish because it's just right. It's just so nice right now. And I've stayed away from it for this week because I'm not fishing in it, and I didn't want to get accused of helping people. So I've stayed away from Gunnersville.
It's definitely on my bucket list of lakes to fish. And again, that goes to you and to Chad and a lot of other people that film there. Is, it almost seems like, and those of us that watch these videos, it almost seems like the mecca of kayak bass fishing. Of course, that's where that's basically where KBF is headquartered, and we see the videos of. My favorite videos, by the way, are the videos of you and Chad fishing together, and then the banter back and forth, because we've all got those friends that we like to fish with, like to talk a little trash to, and we don't do it as much. She outfished me last year. She had a really good year last year, but like you were talking about showing people how to fish. That was my favorite thing, is teaching her a couple of things. I would tie on her knots. Of course, she's gotten really good at. She ties her own knots, does her own baits, picks out what she wants to throw, and knows where to throw. Now I always talk about getting you thinking like a fish.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a good area, signs of life. Birds.
Yep.
Wherever that life's at, you're going to have fish. But what would be, I guess, a memory for you that you knew fishing was it for you? Whether it's that big fish or that first fish. What would be the aha moment for you with fishing, kayak or otherwise?
So it kind of is it's a long story, but I'm going to shorten it a lot. So when I loved bass fishing, and I loved taking people fishing. I love fishing with people and things like that. But when I realized that it was something that I wanted to do the rest of my life, and I wanted to have a part in the industry or a part in the community. I was a moderator on Bass Resource. I had met in 2001. I met a gentleman by the name of Mike Buca, who you might know as the Bull Shad Buca, who owns the Bull Shad swim bait. But this was long before he started making swim baits. I met him, became friends with him, talked to him a little bit. He gave me some advice, and then I started guiding for the Kingfisher Society on Richmond Mill Lake, which was a private 120 or 225 acre lake that had feeder trained largemouth on it, and I just got to take people fishing. But I had this gentleman, had to been in his mid 80s. He'd been working hard his whole life. He was a multi-millionaire on my boat. And like I said, I was just a caddy. I tied knots and took fish off a hook, and that's all I did, and said, here, cast there. But I at the end, I never could connect with him all day long. He was behind me. He was on the back of the boat, and I was sitting in the cockpit the whole day. And I never could connect with him. And I'd look over, and I had to teach him how to cast a spinning reel. And I'd look over, and I'd see the line swimming off. And I'm like, hey, you going to get that? And showing him that he needed to set the hook and that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, I was just like, I never could connect with him. And he turned to me and he said, you know what? I just had one of the greatest days of my life. And this is a man who is, like I said, mid 80s, been working hard and making money his whole entire life. And he realized that was a special day for him. And I was like, I want to do this for a lot more people.
Yeah.
I want to be able, and that's when I found, so back up a little bit. Mike Buca told me, he said, if you want to be in the industry, you got to find your own niche. Mm-hmm. And that's when the Boy Scouts and that niche and the YouTube and all this stuff collided, and this all started. And And so he told me, back in the, and everybody still thinks this is you got to be a professional tournament angler to make your living, and you got to be seen, and everybody's got to know you, and you got to be popular. And so he said, picture yourself in a crowd of thousands and thousands of people who were trying to get sponsored to where they can make a living doing this, and everybody's holding up the same sign, and everybody looks the same. How are you going to make your sign different? And that's when I decided that I didn't want to fish tournaments, and I made a totally different sign and stood in a totally different place. So
nice. I love it.
yeah.
I have two questions that are somewhat related. Well, they are related. What's your favorite lure to throw? And also, what lure do you think is underrated?
So my favorite one, and my answer I always give, is the one the bass wants. Because I change a lot, and I'm always retying and tying and all this stuff. But currently, my favorite one has to be a chatterbait. Whether it be the new Evo, which is as good as the jackhammer, or the
yes, it
jackhammer,
is. Yes, it is.
And so actually it's a little better because you can put super glue on that little collar and it stays your trailers stay on there. But that's the only reason it's better. It's about, but I love a chatterbait because it works great in Gunnersville grass, and I guarantee you 90% of the people that are catching fish right now are catching them on chatterbait in that tournament. But it's not a fluke. A fluke works sometimes, parts of the year when they're up shallow. And what was the second question?
What do you think is the most underrated bait?
Oh, gosh, the most underrated bait would have to be just a regular ribbon tail worm.
I was just going to say the worm.
Yeah, just a regular. I mean, from June till middle of September here in the South, I'm dragging a Texas rig worm and catching giants.
Yeah.
Was it year before last in August? I fished 16 days and caught 103 inches. It was the smallest limit I caught in 16 days. And it was all on a worm and a jig.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the industry has gotten so, there's so many options. I'm not going to say complicated, but you just have more options. Sometimes, I mean, there's more people have caught bass on just a ribbon tail, straight tail, just a plastic worm. And I always feel like people look over your worms to get to, the bugs and the tentacles and the pinchers and all that. And they work, don't get me wrong. But sometimes just throwing a big, my favorite is the black and blue, just a long, thick worm, and especially that summertime bite. She's seen that too, where, big bait catch big fish sometimes. Sometimes it's worth not getting as much action as to getting the bite.
I want to give everybody a challenge. When the water temperature is in the 80s, the mid 80s, or 80s to 90s, okay, we get 92, 93s down here in Georgia, something every other year or so. But when it gets that hot, go offshore, find yourself a little drop that has a hard edge to it, and cast that thing out and set a timer. And do not get that worm back in the boat for 4.5 to 5 minutes. In other words, drag that thing to where you're counting pebbles, and you pull it up, you pop it over a pebble, and you pull it up, and it's similar to a technique called stitching. You just go super, super slow and watch how many giants that you catch just doing that. 3/8 half-ounce Texas rig, big ribbon tail worm, and watch how many giants you catch just doing that. But you got to get comfortable. You can't be standing doing this. You got to sit down and relax. And I call it eating a sandwich, because about the time you get it in, and you could probably have eaten a sandwich. So.
That's really good advice. Because and I feel like, and I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I feel like most people slowing down. I feel like a lot of people maybe fish too fast for the conditions. I'm definitely guilty of that. I like to move. I like to get my trolling motor. I like to move along banks. I like covering more ground, which again, there's a technique and the strategy to that. But sometimes, not saying it never happens. Those big mamas down there, they don't tend to chase things too quick. And like you said, they've been around the block a few times, and they've got a little bit more smarts than some of those younger cats in there. And The biggest fish that I've ever caught have usually been on a really slow technique, whether it be a Texas rig or running a square bill over some cover, my personal best was last year at a place called Hollow Bend, and caught her, maybe 10 foot in front of us on the bank, and just rolling a square bill. But there was there was a lot of beaver in the area. So there's a lot of sticks and twigs and stuff. So I was having to run it really slow because I was feeling it hitting those sticks. So it caused me to do it really, really slow. And all of a sudden I thought I got hung up, and it started running. And then before you knew it, I had this big thing where she's having to run to the truck to get a camera. I didn't have anything with me. Best fish I catch are when I don't have a camera or don't have a measuring board with me. Now there's always one on me or always one in the truck there. But yeah, just knowing that slow roll, specifically in summertime here, but really anytime, just never. I always try to force myself to go back to doing that myself.
Yeah.
Another question. We all know that you bass fish. Is there any other fish that you actually really enjoy catching as well?
Yes, I lived in southern Louisiana. I'd never catch another bass again in my life. Yep. I love redfish and trout. Absolutely love chasing redfish in Louisiana. So, yeah, that's something I want to do every fall.
You're not the first person to say that. We had you were on there with Jameson. Jameson, that was his favorite.
I would stay in his RV, and I have fish down there. Jameson's the reason I love redfish, because I went down there first with him, and I've been on 3 or 4 trips with him down there. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's definitely a lot of them down there. I lived in southern Louisiana for a couple of years, and didn't realize what I had in my backyard when I was down there.
Yeah. So I got a question for you. How do you like the PWR?
Man, so working at a paddle shop, I've got access to everything. So I've owned an Unlimited before, and I love the Unlimited. Don't get me wrong. That's one of my favorite kayaks for customizing. The PWR, specifically, I did a video where I compared the New Canoe Unlimited with the Bonafide SS127. And I said that the SS127 was a better value out of the box immediately, but I felt like the Unlimited had a higher ceiling. Well, this was like I didn't know. This was like 2 weeks before they unveiled the PWR, because this is shortly after ICAST that I did that video, but before they unveiled the PWR. So now I see a Bonafide with a better hull design that planes across the water. Foot controlled rudder was the kicker for me. You got pod storage. You got the lid where you can stick your catch board. So, even if someone's not wanting to run, dual graphs and live scope and all of this stuff, I paddled it my first video on the water, and I was impressed by how it paddled. Now I run a motor on it now, but the reason I got that kayak was because I paddled it and I loved the way it paddled through the water. It skimmed across. Having that drop down rudder as opposed to just a fixed rudder like Native did there for years, that drop down rudder and being able to steer it while you're paddling, it keeps you from having a sweep stroke and do all this. It really, I felt like I could go for a long period of time. It didn't feel like a giant boat in the water. And now being on the water with it, with the motor, having that motor straight, sliding it with the foot controlled steering, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but nothing is. That's the best value, in my opinion, on the market right now, because for the price and what you get and where you can go with it, that's not going to be a boat that you can grow out of. Me personally, as a consumer, that's what I look for. So I'm not going to go crazy on rigging it, but I want something, because my needs may change. So 2 or 3 years down the road, I may have, I may have the Gene Jensen setup with the micro anchor and the graphs and all of this stuff. But man, the layout of it, the accessories that come out for it, if you don't like the pod, I actually use the pod. I almost feel like I'm in the minority sometimes, but I use the pod for stuff. But they have the plate where you can delete that. So if you want to open your deck up a little bit, I'm tall and big, so I can stand in it no problem. I don't have any issues. I like a little bit of a looser primary stability, and Bonafide does a really great job of the secondary stability. And again, places to store my gear, the pull-out drawer, everything is so convenient, and I don't feel like I have to add a lot of stuff to it to make it mine. And that's why I like it. And we've been selling a ton of them. I sold one today with the motor kit and the motor, and I sell it on how easy it is to rig up. Obviously we can do it at the store, but if somebody wants the PWR and they, we can send them a bow motorization kit. Bonafide does a great job of doing videos on how to do that. I mean, it's the same video I'm watching when I did my first one. And I love that they figured out that people want a rigging to where they can release and deploy their motor from their seated position instead of having to climb up to the front there. Just little things like that. And Bonafide's just been, Big Adventures has just been kind of, in my opinion, 2024 has kind of been their year this year. The Titan X, the Skiff. I love the Skiff. I think the Skiff gets kind of glazed over, and maybe that's why they didn't do the PWR at ICAST. I don't know. But the Skiff is a very underrated kayak. They got the RVR, which is a phenomenal. Our passion's kind of river fishing too. So we got an RVR in there as well. But yeah, everything they're making right now is just really, really solid. And I'm excited to see where they go in the future. But I think their lineup this year is going to drive the industry moving forward because the things that they're doing right, you're going to see that on other things as well. So
I was a big part of the design of the PWR, and I always like to hear people's opinions on it because I take a lot of pride in it. I mean, their steerable rudder was my idea. The plates, the sacrificial rigging plates. I know it came out on the native first, but when it showed up at ICAST and it had those on there, I turned to Hans and I said, "Wait a minute." So I don't know what the story is between how the Titan got those two, but it is what it is.
It's appreciated. It's appreciated from the retail side of it. So
it's so easy. It makes it so easy to rig, and that idea came from my old Alumacraft where I had a plate up front that I had all my plugs and stuff, and I didn't like it because it was too small, so I cut a hole and made it bigger and made my own plate. And then when we started working on that, I was like, what if we could it be possible to do that? And so Hans is a genius. So you just give him an idea and he goes with it. But, being able to test that as a prototype, it was a joy. Coming from the SS and so I tested the prototype for almost 18 or 19 days, something like that, 20 days. And then I had to get back in my SS and fish a KBF tournament because the prototype wasn't registered. And for the whole week of pre-fishing into the tournament, I was like, man, I missed the PWR. I missed the stability. I missed the being able to handle big water and being able to move smoothly, over big water. And so I'm not saying the SS isn't stable, but the PWR is a lot. You can just feel it. It's just so much. You hit that secondary stability, and you ain't going anywhere, And so and then the increased speed. We increased the speed by 20% just from that whole design.
I can attest to that.
And then I increased it another 10% by losing 50 pounds. So
and we I got some same friends. We went fishing on the river here lately, but I've gotten into night fishing, and especially for bass. And friend has he's got a pro angler, an older pro angler with the XI3 on it, and then I had the PWR with the XI3, and I wasn't trying to show off. I just we're going across the lake, so I hit it. I didn't hit it all the way to 10, but I was like a 7 or 8, and I'm passing him. He goes, "Whoa!" And I was like, "Yeah," because hull design is. And I did the video on kayak stability and maybe why some people focus a little too much on it, because that's the number one question I get asked on every video is how stable is it, or how stable is it compared to this, or but your maneuverability, what are you giving up for that stability? So Bonafide does great with stability. That kayak specifically, the way it goes across the water, and I said this when I did that video where I'm paddling, is I can't wait to see what this does with a motor on it. And I don't think anyone had did a video on it then, so it's still kind of an unknown. But then when you and Chad, I think Chad had like a Torpedo on the back of it, and he was getting some great speeds on it. There's a guy in Texas works at a little paddle shop, TG Kayak and Canoe. He did one. It was a PWR with it was a Torpedo 1103 on the back. He did a speed test on it. He got up over 6 miles an hour on it.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's perfect. And I just shared his video because, like, okay, I don't have to do this video because it's already out there. But people really looking at that kayak, and if they're putting a motor on it, your resistance in the water is really important. So your speed, because that's going to be, how quickly you get there, which is going to be how long you're running your motor, which is going to be how hard you taxing that battery.
I'm just going to throw in on that. When it comes to, if I went up against either one of you in that PWR with a motor, I'm in a Hobie Lynx. Like, he has to take it down a notch because I'm like, I can't keep up.
That's fast though. But yeah, when I get out there if I'm putting a motor in a kayak, I want to do serious fishing. I want to cover a lot of ground. I want to get to those spots. And I'm not covering these vast miles and miles of spots, but being able to sit in a spot, hit a button, lock it in. And yeah, I mean, the motor's not cheap by any means, but man, it's a completely different craft. And when you're talking about, I think I can build one of them out for about $3,600 without the battery. And that's extremely reasonable. We sell pedal drive kayaks that are more expensive than that.
Yep.
And I think when people really, if somebody got an opportunity to use a kayak like that with a motor and what that does for you, and if you don't want to use it, you got a pin you can pull out, it comes out, unplug your battery, and you're back to paddling. So I think that's something I've done more of this year than I have the previous 3 years combined. I think we've done about 8 motors just this spring, just people getting ready. And there's more kayaks to do them on, whether it's the Titan X or the PWR or the new canoes. I mean, it really, really nice. So again, here's this question again. And again, I understand it. I'm not, when I say this stuff, I'm definitely not belittling anyone, because stability is important. It's just the point that I always make is how much stability and what kind of stability you need. Right. And I kind of wanted to, on this one here, what do you think is more stable, the PWR or the Unlimited? Have you ever been in Unlimited?
I have. Okay. The PWR is stable by design. The Unlimited is stable by width. Yes. Because it carries width more for the full length of the boat. And so you're talking about a little bit kind of like, apples and tangerines, or oranges and tangerines. That's kind of what you're talking about. They look the same, but they're still quite a bit different. I can tell you this, in the PWR, if you're about to reach that point in no return, or you're at that point in no return when you're flipping it, you can save yourself and put yourself back over a lot easier than the Unlimited. Only because I've tested both of them that way. I was doing a demo day years ago, and I watched a kid go out with a big rig and flip it. And then he went out with the SS-127 and he flipped it. And I went out to the next one and he flipped it on purpose. Grab a handle and grab the handle on the opposite side and roll it. And I watched him for about an hour or so. And then I met him on the beach, and I was like, "Hey, what were you doing that for?" He goes, "I wanted to see which one was the hardest to flip." And I was like, "Well, what is it?" He's like, "The SS was the hardest." And I was like, and that's when I started looking at stable by design.
Yeah.
And so I did the same thing, but I didn't want to flip them. I just got them to that point in no return, where you sit on the side of it and you lean forward until it goes over, and you try to see what it is. And it's just different, I love the Unlimited because how easy it is to rig.
Yeah.
But that was my goal, was to have a with the PWR. That was Hans's goal mainly. But one of the things we talked about was having it easy to rig, but having a place for everything and having the whole design shaped like a backward or like a teardrop, so it pushed water out of the way, and it just was a lot more efficient. So the speed you're going to get from it's faster than you're going to get for the unlimited. And so we got all of that in one package. So.
And I agree with that. So we sell both of those kayaks, and we sell a ton of them there, Walt. And it's like he said there, it's different but same. Like you said, the oranges and tangerines comparison there. Very stable on primary stability on both of them. I've always loved the secondary stability on a Bonafide, and that's going to be important to you when you're turning it. You can let a lean into it, and you want to be in a calm situation if you're in a new kayak. And like he said, kind of play around with that point of no return there, because a lot of guys like me, big guys, they stand up and they feel that initial wiggle and they panic. They're either going to overcorrect for one side or the other. And with the Bonafide, you're going to have that secondary, that second catch, as I call it, that second wall of resistance. And once you get to that point, it's a different ball game. I keep mine in the high position, so I'm going to feel a little bit more tippy than most people that run it in the low. And I've leaned down all the way to catch a fish, to get that, that big largemouth. I don't want to boat up, and I forgot my net, which I tend to always do there. And I never felt like I was going in. And the last thing I want to do is get wet. If I'm out there at night or out there in the middle of the lake, that's the last thing I want to do is get out there. And I'm never going to put somebody in something that I feel is going to put them in danger. You're fine with both of them. It really comes down to, between the PWR and the Unlimited, it's whether you want that wide open deck space or you want, like Gene said, great organization. You can do it with both, but I feel like with the Unlimited, it's a little bit more of a investment, whether it's going with the gear pod or going with some tackle organization. You've already got that in the PWR. That's why I like the value of it. But again, both great boats. And reel and roll here. Again, the legend taught me how to fish and create content. Thank you for everything you two have done with the sport. Hey, I'm just getting started here. I'm just trying to get people in the right plastic. These guys definitely teach you how to fish and teach you how to create. But man,
it's a blast. It's so much. I mean, you said it earlier in the podcast, is that I'm at that point where I've done so many videos on the same subjects that it's so hard to find new content. You might see a change up in content 3 or 4 times this year while I'm trying to find, my new love when it comes to that kind of stuff, because, I've got 900 videos.
wow.
And so it's, and I'm still teaching, still doing what I'm trying to do, but I'm just trying to find the new angle and that kind of stuff. And it's at that point, and I love doing it. I love figuring it out. I've got my 22-year-old son is an amazing editor. If anybody wants their stuff edited, he's pretty cheap. He's, even for me, he's pretty cheap. I think he's like $8 a minute. So when he's done with the video, you take the minutes of the video and you times it by 8. And so, and that's cheap compared to what everybody else does, but he does such a good job. And then I get to do it out of a kayak every day, which is a blast.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I kayak fish a lot. My content is primarily just walkthroughs and on the water stuff. And I've done a couple of trips where I'll film a little bit, but to me, the fishing part, that's kind of my personal thing. And like I said at the beginning, there's so many people that have kayak fishing content out there. That's just like you talk about niche. That's my niche, storefront, hands-on plastic, talking about why this might be good for you, why it might not be good for you. And, but man, fishing is what got me into it. But the thing that always amazes me about a lot of these kayaks is the amount of engineering, research and development. And when somebody asks me, why are these kayaks so expensive? And they are, let's be real about it. But the amount of research and development, the amount of mistakes, trial and error, all of that. And also every time a hand touches it, it costs more. So whether it's putting it in the mold, the truck driver, the guy unloading it, the guy in the warehouse punching it into the computer, that all costs money. So It's part of it, but I'm big on supporting the U.S. made, the rotomolded kayaks. I always tell people, buy your second kayak first. You're going to be a lot happier, and you're actually going to be cheaper in the long run. Because that's what a lot of people will buy the big box store kayaks first to see if they like it. And I always tell people, if you find the right kayak that fits your budget, obviously, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
But if you find something that doesn't perform well and it's not, you're going to fall out of it, it's not built for anything, performance, comfort, or anything, you're probably not going to like it. You're going to feel like you wasted your money. And to me, that runs the danger of somebody maybe not getting into the paddle sport that may have loved it, or they could be the next Gene Jensen or, Chad Hoover, somebody that may have not had the guidance. That's what got me into it. That's why I enjoy it, is giving some of the guidance to go the direction they want to go and have success doing that.
So, and that brings up another thing, the way my kayak is rigged. I hate when people say, I want my kayak rigged just like the Flukemaster. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
See, my job is to push the envelope, try to figure out what's the best, or what the kayaks can do and what their limits are. Because of the relationships and the contracts that I have with companies, I can do it and not be out thousands of dollars if I screw things up.
Yeah.
And so let me make all the mistakes, and then I get to talk about the mistakes and talk about how to do it right and things like that. What I tell people is I've got everything a $100,000 bass boat has, but the gas payment and the boat bill. But I don't want everybody to go out and do the same thing until they do it slowly and figure out what they want. Because if you put that much stuff on the top of a kayak and above the center line, it gets a little bit more squirrely, and it makes it a lot more difficult to do things. And what's good for me may not be good for other people.
That's
for
a
instance,
very good point.
Fish finders get in the way of landing a fish, and where nets go, and I've always got a camera in the front of me getting in the way, and that kind of stuff. And so just when you rig up a kayak, do it slowly, figure out where you want things and where things work the best for you,
And that is 100%, because I can tell you, one of his coworkers has a RVR, and I'm running an RVR. And the way we rig it up is completely different because we have different needs, and we like things in different locations. And we're always big proponents on somebody coming in, don't get all of the accessories now, take it out, see what you feel like you're missing, and then start adding that way. And the PWR, one of the coolest things about that kayak specifically is you have so much room to grow. So you can start off really small and do it incrementally.
Yeah. And a new rigging plate is only $15.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's especially working at a retail store. The fact that if my boss heard me say that to a customer, he'd probably pull his hair out. But I say, when people get, maybe they watch a video of yours or Chad's or anybody out there, and they see all this stuff. And I see it a lot, because God bless them, some people don't have budget as a problem. So they see a video, it's like, like you said, I want it rigged up just like, Flukemaster, and he's never been kayak fishing, but they will do that. And I see it. All I've got to do is I go on Facebook Marketplace and I look at used kayaks, and I'll see somebody trying to get $8,000 out of a kayak that they put live scope on, or a trolling motor, and got they got the Dakota lithium 100 amp hour batteries, and they got, you could tell they went through the checklist. They had a checklist before that thing got wet, and they wanted to go down there. And if somebody does that and they know that's what they want, that's one thing. But if they're still trying to figure things out, as soon as you say yes, and I call it the yes syndrome, was they said yes to the kayak, so they spent a good chunk of money. Well, what's another 100? What's another 200? And then before you know it, you've got this huge setup. And then when you take it out a couple of times, maybe say, well, this thing's too heavy, or, it's too many things on it. And I always tell people, when you're looking at, if you're fishing, get your rod holder, get your tackle storage, whether it's a Milk Crate or a Black Pack Pro. I always joke that all roads lead to the Black Pack Pro, but you can start you can start with the milk crate, but you're going to get there. So if it's in the budget, get it. If not, no big deal. But
Yep.
Somewhere to put your stuff, and then you already got a boat to fish from. And then after that, if you want to go nighttime, you get some lights. Yeah, if you want to, you can do that. But man, I just, it hurts me to see that, because if somebody wants a lighter throw and go kayak and they added 100 pounds to a 110 pound kayak, yeah, somebody wasn't asking them the right questions, or they weren't asking themselves the right questions.
Yeah. If I didn't have a trailer that I could back in the water and load a kayak, I could not have mine rigged the way it is, because it is heavy. Even without the electronics on it, even without, it's still heavy. I use 6-gauge wire in that son of a gun. It's heavy.
Yeah.
And I don't, and the joke is I won't let anybody weigh it, because I don't want to know how much it is. It's because I may be, if I know, then there's probably certain tournaments I can't fish because it's overweight. But and maybe losing 55, 60 pounds is a good thing, man.
Yeah, I resemble that. I'm in the process of watching my weight, but not actively trying to lose it. But I'm bad. I tend to lose weight in the summertime, and I tend to gain it in the winter. I get in that hibernation mode where, like I said, we're not kayaking, we're not being outdoors. I have always, even when I was an athlete being younger, and I've always been the sweater. I will sweat like a slab of bacon in a hot summer sun. I will just drench a shirt. Well, when I'm working and I'm loading stuff in the warehouse, or we're unloading a truck of 100 kayaks, or any of that, and when I'm working and doing something, it curbs my appetite. The last thing I want to do is eat a big lunch when I'm just been lifting stuff and moving stuff. But in the wintertime,
keep talking.
In the wintertime, I'm sitting around, I'm watching YouTube videos, I'm eating a snack, and when I'm done with the snack, I'm like, what sounds really good? Getting another snack. It's.
Oh, man.
I've got another question, because him and I were just having this conversation. I tend to have this weird thing that when everything goes wrong, baits end up in a tree, I end up screwing up my spinner, not my bait caster, but my spinner. That tends to be like my best day of fishing. If I've done none of that, I catch nothing.
Yep.
Do you have anything weird like that?
Oh,
any kind of superstition?
No, just don't catch one on the first cast. That's my only superstition. I have zeroed in or caught one fish in so many tournaments by catching one on the first cast.
Wow.
And I say that the very last tournament I fished last week up in Lake Chattooga, I caught one, my first cast ever on Lake Chattooga. I caught one on the first cast in practice, and it ended up being a good day. But that's my superstition in a tournament. I'll make the first cast off to the right a little bit and reel it back in before I catch something, and then I go fishing. Other than that, that's it. But yeah, it's
kidding on that. So we did a river trip, and I mean, we're catching fish. We're on them. This is last weekend.
Last Sunday, yeah.
We're on them. Like, I'm catching big fish. I'm missing bigger fish. Like, I'm having a time. Our other friend, he's up the creek still because he's still on them. He doesn't want to move down. And I can see her. She's just like shaking her head, and she's like, and I want her to enjoy her fishing more than me, because if you got a wife who loves to fish and she's catching fish, that means I get to go fishing more. We're going to go out again really soon. So, but she's getting bird's nested. She's getting hung up. Her kayak control is a little off. And I'm like, don't do this. Cause like, we're going to be out here for like 8 hours or more, and we're in hour 1. I do not want her to be saying I'm over this in hour number 1. And I keep telling her, I was like, keep positive. Don't get so hard. It's fine. Like, I've already lost 2 lures. It happens. I put a crankbait in a tree, and I'm sitting there, I'm pretty accurate with my cast, but every once in a while but when she gets it finally back in and reeled in, and then all of a sudden she's on them. She's catching fish. I'm like, all right, let's go. So then I'm moving around, but yeah.
And then yesterday, none of it happened, and I got skunked.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was a lot where we were at too.
But still, that tends to be my superstition.
I had one of the worst days I've had in a long time yesterday fishing. I caught one fish about this long on a popper and sat there with my active target staring at bass all day long that would not bite my bait. I mean, just would not.
Yeah.
There was something going on, whether it be an algae bloom that was just starting or something that kept them from wanting to bite anything. And so I was just, I don't even want to talk about yesterday. I was mad. I spent 7.5 hours out there fishing.
That's really important to hear, though. So for those that are just getting into it, and and granted, YouTube videos, I'm not going to say YouTube definitely has not ruined fishing. It's brought it to the forefront, in my opinion. But when you're watching these guys, they could be going over an entire day or an entire 2 days of content just to get that one video. And you're watching guys cast into the corner, casting a tree. They're pulling out these giants. And when somebody goes out there fishing, they're thinking, man, I'm doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just not the day to happen. Sometimes the conditions aren't right, or just, it could be anything, but it happens to the best of everybody. But when you're watching someone's movie that they put out and they're just catching these giants, and they're throwing these bubble gum and yogurt, colored worms, and they're just pulling out these giants. Like, it doesn't always happen like that. So patience, keeping a positive attitude. And like she was talking about with her superstition, kind of with about, things going bad at the first, to me, that breeds confidence. So when the bad stuff does happen, that I think makes her confident that good things are about to happen. So I think keeping a positive mindset, I think, is a big thing. Not that fish are going to feed off that, but it definitely helps your mental state. I've thrown rods before. We down at the creek, and literally one after another going into a tree or a brush, or just now granted, I'm not going to do that to my expensive stuff, but
no, he threw it and then subsequently stepped on it and broke it. So
there you go.
Not my proudest moment there.
So my son texted me the other day as he's editing one of my videos. He said, "Dad, I need you to catch a fish in your intros."
Yes, son.
I texted him back. I said, "You need to tell that to the fish."
Yeah. Well, man, we're at an hour 13. Again, I really, really appreciate you doing this. Really appreciate your time. Those of you that are still hanging out with us here, again, hit that like button, get this video out, tell your friends, go subscribe to Flukemaster on YouTube if you have not already. I suspect most of you are, but if you got those people that are wanting to get into it, that want to learn a few things, whether they're beginner or not, definitely introduce them to Gene's channel. Gene may not push his channel on this platform as much, but I'll definitely do that. It's definitely worth it. If you have any questions on fishing in general, whether it's out of a kayak or a boat, there's chance that Gene has done a video on it. Anything from knot tying to different hook sets, different hooks for different baits, or just getting started, starting it simple, getting introduced into it without thinking you got to spend several $100s just to get started. So, and I think that's very, very, very important, getting into fishing, because it can get very expensive very quickly, but keeping it simple, starting out, and then building on what works for you. So, Gene, thank you so much for coming by.
Yes,
I
sir.
really appreciate it. Love to have you back on in the future here, but man, look forward to your content coming up, and man, just keep at it.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I got one launching Sunday, I believe, and then I'm out of my backlog, and I got to get caught back up for my vacation.
Oh yeah,
So.
I've got a little bit of a batch set up now, but yeah, that's always the challenge with me, is keeping it going instead of getting to a point where, like, oh, I got to put something out today. What's a good thing? That's.
Well, as a viewer and somebody who knows a little bit about YouTube, you're doing it the right way. You found your little niche, and you know, I love the fact that your stuff is honest. It's
Yeah.
your honest opinion. You're explaining it like somebody who deals with every single kayak out
Yeah.
there. And you don't bash other kayaks and stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And it'll continue to grow because it's a big resource. But as people find you, you'll see it, you know, it's going to get bigger and bigger. There's no doubt.
I
Because
appreciate that.
I enjoyed what you did with the PWR and those. I was like, yeah, that's somebody who wants to be honest about this. You know, it's
Yeah.
just,
And there, like I said, it's easy to be honest because there's some good stuff out there, and there's some things that maybe people need to consider when, you know, whether it's the PWR or the New Canoe or Jacksons or anything or Hobies. There's pros and cons to everything. You know, and I've said it several times. I work for a place and a family that allows me to do this, and you know, I mean, obviously they benefit from this too. I mean, we brought in a lot of people from it, but
yeah,
you know, giving someone a library of honest feedback, showing pros and cons, you know, and you know, things to consider because man, you see all of these companies do a really good job of marketing and putting social media stuff out, and some of them that may not have been as good in the past are definitely getting better at it. So you can make anything look really, really good, and just, you know, telling someone maybe to pump on the brakes, like, okay, you know, just this is good for this reason, but you know, just something to consider. This thing weighs 150 pounds. Is that going to be a problem for you? I think that's the number one thing is boat weight, you know?
Yeah.
I remember the Titan X. We got the first load coming out of the factory of those, and we got them at my store before the official weight had been released. So we had no idea. We thought, you know, like, oh, it'll, you know, it's not going to be like a 140, 130 pound big rig. They come shipped in a t-shirt material.
Yep.
And that thing came off the back of the truck and into my chest. And the first one come out was a Titan X 12.5. And that thing hit me in the chest and I grabbed it. And of course the t-shirt sliding around on it. I'm like, oh my God. And we're trying to find the handles on this thing. And we're cutting the slits, you know, the two padded grips. I'm like, holy crap. And even then I wasn't sure, like this thing feels really heavy, but I'm sitting there thinking like maybe 130, 140, 172 pounds. Like, okay.
That's a lot of plastic.
It's, but it's a good point to make. So every time a kayak comes out or someone looks at a kayak, like, well, why don't they do this? Or why don't they do that? And we're like, well, it adds weight. So this kayak is like a kid, and I'm not down on anybody that designed this, but it's just like if you gave a kid a bunch of parts and pieces and they wanted to make their dream kayak. So they put everything on it. A kid's not going to leave anything out. You got reinforcements on the bow and the stern. You got reinforced, you know, you got aluminum gear track. You got a Millennium 360 swivel seat. It's metal. You got a metal base to that. You got battery tubs. You got all kinds of stuff. And yeah, 172 pounds. It maneuvers well on the water. It's it is the most stable kayak I've ever been in. And but yeah, I tell people like, you know, what's your trade-off? Because typically it's maneuverability and stability. With that one, it's stability and weight. You know, so if you're not trailering it, man, pack a lunch, bring 2 friends with you because it's going to be a long day. All right, man. Well,
yeah, man.
I really appreciate you. I'll let you go here, Gene. And man, I look forward to talking to you in the future, bud.
Yep, for sure. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll see you.